Ladies and gentlemen, good day. I'm Mr. Dixon Akam, the CEO of the Dicalo Consulting Group. The Dicalo Consulting Group is a management consulting group offering services across the Middle East and Africa, ranging from management consulting, VAT advisory, corporate tax, business setup and corporation, and other business strategies that companies may actually need at the moment. We're going to be focused on the business setup aspect of the company, and we have our presenter today, who is Katia, all the way from Mauritius. And Katia is going to be partnering. Katia's company is partnering with the Decal Consulting Group to be able to see how we can make it easier for companies across the globe to be able to set up in Mauritius. In the meantime, I will give you the floor to Katia to introduce herself, and then from there, we're going to commence with the program. Over to you, Katia.
Yes.
Katia, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Dixon. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, okay, thank you. So thank you, Dixon, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today as we're going to explore how Mauritius, as an international financial center, is uniquely positioned as a strategic base for cross-border investment. So just a brief about myself, as Dixon rightly said, so I've been a business consultant in Mauritius, have more than 20 years, including 11 at the Big Four and 9 in a fiduciary company. So at various level, and the last one being obviously at leadership development level and leadership management level. So I've been working across various industries. I'm specialized in tax. I've been doing that for over 20 years. Not only in tax, but I've been helping businesses to unlocked actually their growth, looking at their strategies, their operations, and their operational practices. So it's my pleasure to be here. Yes, in today's complex environment and marked by rising interest in emerging markets or evolving wealth strategies, smart investors, entrepreneurs, and even wealth managers are looking for a strategic, compliant, efficient investment hub that offers access, clarity, stability, confidence, particularly trust. And Mauritius is exactly that. So, probably let me start by giving you a small introduction about Mauritius for those who haven't yet heard about us. I don't think you are too many looking at us today, watching us today. So, Mauritius is a nation island in the Indian Ocean, and we form part of Africa. We are famous for our stunning beaches, crystal clear water, and natural beauty landscape. We are located about 2,000 kilometers off the southern coast of Africa. Actually, the island was named in honor of Prince Maurice of Nassau. So he was a leader in the Dutch Republic who had discovered the island in 1598. The Dutch tried to colonize the island several times, but they faced difficulties and they eventually abandoned in 1710 after having caused the extinction of our dodo, the iconic flightless bird. But yet they have introduced sugarcane, and that was the first pillar of a Mauritian economy. But then subsequently the island was colonized by French, British, and this is reflected in our system, which is a hybrid of British common law and French civil law. And this is one of the rare jurisdictions where it happens. In 1968, we gained independence from Britain, and since 1992, Mauritius has become a republic within the Commonwealth. So the official language here is English, whilst a majority of the population is bilingual, so fluent in both English and French. That's why probably I speak English with a French accent.
Yeah.
And despite being a small island, it's worth noting that our exclusive economic zone is 2.3 million kilometers, and that's huge. So today, Mauritius is ranked as one of Africa's most developed and democratic nations, and that is leveraging on our political and economic stability. So, probably coming to the business part, obviously, what would make Mauritius an ideal platform for investment into Africa? And that's the core of our debate today. So, no, Mauritius is not just a tourist destination, it is a mature, a robust international financial center, which boasts 3 decades of experience and expertise in cross border investment and finance. What makes Mauritius stands out as an IFC is a political and economic environment stability, which is essential for any long-term investment strategy. We have a robust regulatory framework, and as I mentioned, our legal system is rooted in both civil and common law. This provides obviously flexibility and familiarity to international investors. We offer a well-developed financial services sector with skilled resources. And in addition, Mauritius has an extensive network of investment promotion protection agreement, the IPPAs, in addition to the double taxation avoidance agreements with over 20 countries, and they are much more being negotiated right now. So these treaties not only protect the investor from double taxation, but they ensure safeguard such as repatriation of profit and protection against expropriation, which is crucial for any business or any businessman. So, for example, if you are a private equity fund based in Mauritius investing into Mozambique or Ghana, those treaties actually allow for tax efficient structuring, which is significantly improving project returns. The tax and legal framework makes Mauritius an efficient conduit for deploying capital across the continent. And I must add on that Mauritius is OECD compliant. So it offers the comfort of transparency and compliance with international norms, which is essential for global investors seeking secure and reputable gateway into Africa. So probably just to conclude on that first part and the introduction part, what I can say is that Mauritius bridges the gap between global capital and African opportunity, offering legal certainty, tax efficiency, and reputational credibility. And its strength lies in an ideal combination of strategic geographical positioning, an investor friendly regulatory framework, robust hybrid legal system, commitment to international compliance standards, investor focused regulation, regional connectivity. Actually, we have access to major African ports and airports. And finally, we have an ideal time zone, which is GMT plus 4. It's the same time in Dubai as here.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Kadia, thanks so much for the marvelous introduction. At least our audience have been able to have a clue on what the history and the economic opportunities that are available in the Mauritius Islands. So initially, I just want to take this opportunity to make our audience understand the reasons why the Dicalo Consulting, in collaboration with your company, why we are having this webinar. Again, we understand that Africa is one of the it's still a virgin market. When I say it's a virgin market, it's a virgin market in the sense that there are a lot of untapped opportunities. And while there are a lot of untapped opportunities, there are equally a lot of global investors, private equity companies within the Middle East and in Europe and across the globe who actually want to do business in Africa, but they don't actually understand how to go or how to navigate the market because of the challenges that are in the market. And again, we realize that some of the main challenges that they are facing is that they face difficulties because of the so many bureaucratic structures that we have within the continent, and that's why the Decalo Consulting Group thought it wise that in a collaboration with its partners, it is good that we establish a network which make it very, very easy for international investors, so private equity companies, or multinationals that want to have a presence in Africa. We want to make it easier for them to be able to get their businesses incorporated without any delay. And again, one of the things that the Decalo Consulting is trying to solve is that we equally realize that trade within Africa it's at a very minimal level, which means that let's take an example, say a Cameroonian company that wants to do business in Mauritius or that wants to do business in say South Africa or in Ghana or in Nigeria, they face a lot of difficulties because they don't understand the procedures and the steps involved in order to get their companies incorporated. And the reason why the Decalo Consulting over the past 4 years has been working with a lot of partners that they are trying to navigate these challenges and make it easier. And the reason why the Decalo Consulting Group has been able to establish this strong MOU with your firm, and the reason why we are now trying to make the public to understand what our partnership can help them navigate the business setup and incorporation process in Mauritius. So in the meantime, in order to ensure that we provide relevant information to our audience, I want you to move directly to give some of the reasons why it is been normal that companies within the African continent or in other continents who are considering doing business in Africa or across the globe, give them a case as to why Mauritius should be the ideal place to do business in Africa. Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. Actually, Mauritius is the ideal platform, the ideal gateway to Africa, and actually, this is not by chance. What has happened is that the authority since long has put in place. Proactive approach actually in streamlining business regulations and facilitating businesses in Mauritius for you to go to cross-border activities. And I must mention that because of this, the conducive environment, and I will delve into details on that, Mauritius is constantly ranking at the top in Africa on the World Bank Ease of Doing Business Index. So, incorporating a company in Mauritius, I understand from you, indeed, companies may find, investors may find it harsh, or there can be hurdles for them to set up companies. But incorporating a business in Mauritius usually takes less than 1 week, actually, subject to you submitting all required information. And the entire process, from the licensing to the tax registration, can be done online via a centralized platform. What Mauritius has done actually, and why it's important to bear that in mind, and you've perfectly spot that on, Dixon. Mauritius boasts strong property rights, contract enforcement, and investment protection law. There is no exchange control here in Mauritius, which is a major advantage as compared to many African peers. I'll give you a concrete example. An investor setting up a regional holding company in Mauritius will find that the regulatory approval are faster, business banking is more efficient, and compliance is clearer than any other jurisdictions. It's happening now. So we have multinationals from Africa, from Europe, from Asia that are using Mauritius as a base for their Pan African strategies. Why are they doing that actually? In addition to us being the first in Africa for the ease of doing business, Mauritius has ranked first in Africa on key international benchmarks. I'm thinking of the economic freedom of the world, the global free trade of a year, the index of African governance, that's a Mo Ibrahim Foundation index, and even the global innovation index. These recognitions actually are based on specific factors, namely, Mauritius has a sophisticated, transparent, well regulated IFC with a conducive ecosystem offering complete range of financial products. So we have global business companies, regional headquarters, treasury management centers, global funds, investment bankings, trust and foundations, even insurance, reinsurance companies, protected cell companies, thinking about captive insurance, and for the high net worth individual, the family office and trust. And there's also the presence of international banks, legal firms, corporate services, investment fund, and private equity fund in Mauritius. I was talking about the banking framework, and we know how challenging can be banking transactions in Africa, for instance, for you to obtain a letter of credit or even being able to transact with other companies that's not outside of your jurisdiction. It's good for you to know that Mauritius banking industry has nearly 20 banks, and the majority of them being foreign banks. And all of those banks are licensed to carry out business activities, both locally and internationally. Some of the biggest and most reputable, actually, banks are found in Mauritius, and the banks offer a range of global banking cross-border activities to corporates, institutions, and even private companies. So just on that part, actually, of the banking system, which can be a challenge and an issue for and going concrete in many African markets because the local regulation restricts businesses from holding foreign currency account or having free access to global payment system. Obviously, this makes international trade particularly cumbersome, international investment inefficient. But a merchant entity can provide a solution actually by allowing companies to operate multi-currency account and engaging in cross-border transaction with greater flexibility. Again, it's worth mentioning, I've said that Mauritius does not impose any exchange control restriction. So through Mauritius, the businesses can centralize their treasury functions, manage foreign exchange exposure more efficiently, and even structure transactions in international hard currencies such as the USD or the euro, and this obviously reduce frictions caused by local currency constraint. So not only Mauritius supports multi-currency account, but it allows free repatriation of capital and profit. So this flexibility makes it easier for African businesses to scale across borders and manage payments with their global partners, their suppliers, and their investors. So concretely, how it would work? For instance, a Nigerian company or Nigerian exporter can establish its treasury company or trading arm here in Mauritius. Through that entity, they can invoice in hard currency, manage forex risks, and interact with a broader range of international banks. And let me just share with you again, it's not theoretical. Many logistics, regional logistics companies, agribusiness companies, fintech companies are already using Mauritius entities for that purpose.
Okay, okay, that's great. Again, you have just said something. One of the biggest challenges, I think you have already addressed that. One of the biggest challenges that are actually hindering our trade within the African continent is that there are a lot of difficulties when it comes to making international transactions or when it comes to, say, receiving payments from abroad. Because of, I begin to doubt how a continent can trade with the rest of the world if we cannot freely move capital around. And again, I think you have just given a good response to that. You've said if the advice I should be telling a client that is based in Lagos in Nigeria or to a company that's in Johannesburg in South Africa, which is facing difficulties in making international payments or receiving payments from customers abroad, the solution is that they need to work, have a holding company, or they should start thinking of how they can structure and manage their treasury activities from what? From Mauritius. Again, now I want us to be very specific in this dimension. Again, given that you have already explained how Mauritius is going to solve the challenges of businesses that are actually facing a lot of difficulties in making international payment. I was talking to one of my clients, I think a week ago, who had to make a USD payment to a vendor in Italy, and it was going to be about $100,000. But it was very difficult for them to make that payment from Cameroon. So what they did, they had to go through somebody who is in the black market to be able to initiate that payment where they go through a third party, they give the equivalent of that amount in the country where they're operating, and maybe plus say 10% or 5%. Then now the third party also looks for another party that is abroad to initiate that payment on their behalf. Automatically, the company has lost trade. There's no audit trade. There's no legitimate audit trade that you can trace that to the company's bank account. You get it. Again, I think with what you have just said, that there are no exchange controls in Mauritius, it means that companies like that should already be thinking of how they can liaise with us to get their companies incorporated in Mauritius Island. So in this respect, I equally realize that some of the things that are hindering trade in Africa and why it's very difficult for our African-based multinational companies to be able to compete with other companies in the marketplace or in the global economy is the issue of taxation. We realize that African countries have a very high rate of taxes, some maybe 30, 35%, even though we understand that countries in the developed world also have high taxes. But since they have the expertise and they are well versed with how the global economy operates, they know how they're able to structure the activities to see how they can mitigate their taxes. But most of our African countries have still not been able to resolve this issue. In this respect, I want you to advise our audience on the taxation rates at the level of the corporate tax or the VAT, and whether there are any withholding taxes involved in Mauritius, so that they can do that comparison. Because if we are taking an example, one of the reasons for a company trying to expand or to shift its operations or strategic operations to another market, tax equal is a very, very important component that they can consider. So let's look at what is the VAT tax, the corporate tax, the withholding tax, and if possible, throw a small light on the income taxes that we have in Mauritius. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for this, Dixon. And just to bounce back, actually, before going to the tax aspect about what you just shared with us. Again, yes, Mauritius can be ideally used as a treasury center. So to overcome all of those challenges that you've just mentioned, using Mauritius as a treasury center for African businesses allows them actually centralizing the treasury governance and function in Mauritius. So what does happen? It will streamline all that liquidity management issue you just mentioned, the mitigating the foreign exchange risk, and obviously optimizing capital allocation amongst various jurisdictions. But I would just to wrap up on what you rightly said. So yes, coming to the tax environment in Mauritius. So we are not at all a tax heaven, and I should make it clear from the start. Actually, there is tax rate in Mauritius, but what we have done is we have balances tax efficiency with global compliance. And this is something that many jurisdictions struggle to do. So our headline corporate tax rate is 15%, but there's a 3%, direct 3% rate for certain export companies or certain global business companies and even qualifying activities. So you being in Mauritius actually and exporting goods throughout the continent, buying it from another continent and sending it to Africa, for instance, having your operational company here in Mauritius, your procurement company here in Mauritius, actually you would be taxed at 3%. There is, just to mention, the VAT as well is as low as 15%, so on major goods and services. But obviously, we do have exemptions or zero-rated supplies, actually. And one of the zero-rated supply is if ever you have a company in Mauritius exporting with just to mention goods or even services actually from Mauritius, these normally attract VAT at 0%. So there's no VAT additional burden for you. Important to note that there are also no capital gains tax in Mauritius, no inheritance tax, no estate duty. Actually, there's no withholding tax on dividends, and any dividend paid by a Mauritian entity is fully exempt from tax in Mauritius. There's also no withholding tax on interest. Royalties paid by Mauritian entities are basically sourced from their foreign source income to the non-residents. In addition to our corporate tax rate being 15%, there are credit mechanism, exemption mechanism available actually for us to ensure that there is no double taxation. So if you have suffered tax in a company abroad, in a foreign jurisdiction, these would normally in most cases be covered already within our treaty network of 46 tax treaties that we have already signed. And I mentioned we have nearly 20 more in the pipeline. So these tax treaties, they not only efficiently ensure cross-border structuring, but what they do is they reduce or completely eliminate capital gain or important withholding tax on cross-border payments such as dividend, interest, royalties. So depending on the treaty we have and with which country we have, we could be in a efficient tax structuring situation whereby when you are having actually repatriation from those countries, despite those countries having withholding tax rate and probably high withholding tax rate, but if we do have a treaty with them, this is generally really lowered or completely eliminated. But what if we don't have a treaty? Again, what you need to know is we have tax credit mechanism, the exemption mechanism, despite not having a treaty. And this is embedded actually in our domestic legislation. Important to note as well that we do have partial income exemption in Mauritius. So, for instance, if you are a holding company in Mauritius and you're receiving dividend from abroad, actually, you could avail yourself up to 80% of partial exemption income. And there are a series of tax incentive holidays that are available to company. I'm thinking about 8-year tax holidays for targeted sectors. We are talking about fintech companies, pharma, e-commerce, which is growing and buzzing at the moment, and agro-processing. So having said that, important, very important to reaffirm and highlight that Mauritius being compliant actually with the OECD, with the EU, with the FATF, all of our tax incentives have been validated, and we are firmly committed to transparency and substance. So it's not about having a shell company here in Mauritius and you will be taxed at zero. That doesn't exist actually. So it's about you having your full-fledged business operation here, managing your regional, global transactions, and having those strategic cross-border activities, but at the same time benefiting from that conducive environment which leads to tax efficiency.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Again, one of the most important thing or the trend now in the world is that all countries are trying everything possible to attract the level a lot of investments when it comes to fintech companies. So, can you elaborate on some of the incentives that are being given to attract fintech companies? Because I think that's a trend in the world, and all countries are doing everything possible to attract the highest technology companies. So again, even if companies are actually considering their decision to incorporate in Mauritius, one of the most important thing in this world now is that all companies want automation. They want a market where they have strong companies that can help them maybe in their digitalization process or in the automation of their business processes. Do we have a very good fintech industry? Do we have a good tech system there that can support the operations of these global companies? Understand that if the companies are considering holding their corporate head office there, it means that they're going to be managing operations in so many other countries in the world. And in order to make it easier for them, automation and digitalization becomes a very, very important tool that is going to help them save costs, if not time. So, can you talk more on that?
Yes, indeed. And Rightly spot on again. So Mauritius is increasingly integrating fintech services, for example, within traditional banking. This opens new opportunities for African businesses that need uh, cross-border digital payment solution, blockchain-based trade finance, and even mobile enabling banking for remote operation. Actually, Mauritius is already putting together the regulatory framework, has already put together a blueprint actually with regards to those new ways and becoming normal ways of doing business. And there's a, let me put it like this, a future ready platform for the African enterprises aiming to scale efficiency. You've covered about the probably the yes, how will it work for the tax rate? For example, I'm thinking about, and we're not talking about repatriation or extrapolating the majority of the profits from Africa, but a private equity firm based in Mauritius and probably investing in manufacturing company in Zambia definitely benefits from the Mauritian-Zambia tax treaty, reducing the withholding tax on dividend from 15% to a low of 5%. And even it eliminates actually capital gain on exiting. For specific fintech companies, and that's just one example, I've mentioned about the tax exemption that you will get. So Mauritius is really trying to position itself as a jurisdiction where you could be based, where you could develop your technology, where you could export that technology actually. And from here, you will be benefiting from exemption as well as that will facilitate the trade with you and the other jurisdictions. I don't know if I've answered your question or you want me to delve further on how we can do that.
I think so far what you it's okay, and if there are any specific questions, we can always if candidates or our audience have any questions, we can always revert to them maybe after the session. Again, what is the east of raising funds in Mauritius? Because I see one of the biggest challenge in Africa is that companies actually face a lot of difficulties in raising capital. Not only companies, equally individuals who may have very good business ideas, but in most cases they always end up not able to implement them because of the difficulties in raising funding. So, how is it easy for a company or an individual to raise funds in Mauritius?
Yes, actually, Mauritius is one of the top fund domiciles in Africa, so providing uh, wide use of private equity, venture capital, and impact funds, so investing on the continent. So we have a regulatory framework, a robust one, which is regulated by the Financial Services Commission, and they have put together actually with our stock exchange regulatory framework, have put in place the procedures or easing those procedures for you to hold money here in Mauritius and then be able to invest as appropriate elsewhere. So these funds regulated by the FSC. So there's obviously strict regulations that happen because remember we are a jurisdiction of confidence. We are jurisdiction of trust. So these funds are regulated here, but the structure can include you having a collective investment scheme, for example, or even a closed-end fund. So pooling money through those types of fund companies is now very easy in Mauritius. The jurisdiction benefiting from its reputational, stable base does attract actually global players to structure their funds and their capital raising activities here in Mauritius. And these can even be structured as companies, as trust, or as limited partnership. So, actually, why would fund managers, for instance, choose Mauritius? Again, I need to come back to that. There's the clarity. There's regulatory clarity, there's international best practice, and we have a protection of the investors. Also, availability of qualified fund administrators, auditors, legal and compliance advisors. We have an easy access actually to fund passporting under the ESG or even the impact investing principles. So all of the DFI will know about it, actually, all the ESG focused investors. Really, for an example, so if an East African focused venture capital registers in Mauritius, it can raise capital from Mauritius, hold shares in Kenya or Tanzania setup, and offer investors tax efficiency return, and all this under a professional regulated structure with a tax efficiency of those companies benefiting from preferential rates and then having the maximum return to the investors.
Okay, thank you. Again, I have a question here. The trend has been most high net worth individuals moving from Europe, from America, from Africa, and even in the Middle East. They have been very, very interested in investing in the estate sector. So, what will you tell an investor who is considering investing in the real estate sector in Mauritius? Do we have for high returns? Is it less regulation? And what are the tax implications and so forth?
Okay. Yes, thank you for mentioning this. Uh, Probably on the first part of the question, you were talking about the high net worth individual. And one of the things that those high net worth individuals look for is family planning and wealth management, obviously. So Mauritius is increasingly seen as a trusted jurisdiction for those high net worth individuals, so looking to grow and preserve their wealth. So we offer a comprehensive suite of wealth management tailored solutions, and these include trust and foundation for legacy, for succession planning, or if you want to do philanthropic structures. We have private family office, and that is protected under a robust legal framework. We have flexible multi-currency accounts, investment tools, and even global banking relationships, as I've talked about. So these vehicles that I've just mentioned allow for efficiency succession planning, asset protection, but also confidentiality, and all this within a transparent framework. So this really shield them from political or economic volatility in their home country. Coming now to that specific point about the tax regime for high net worth individual. Again, mentioning that our regime is one of the most friendly tax regime in the world. We have no capital gains tax, no estate duty, no inheritance tax. So the high net worth individual looking for a base for the succession planning can use the vehicles to have protect their assets. But yes, they can also invest in Mauritius, actually in the real estate in Mauritius. So we provide for several schemes under the integrated resort scheme mainly, whereby we facilitate actually for non-citizen to come and invest in Mauritius. So you could have immovable property that will be available to you. by the seaside, why not? Or by a golf course. And actually, there are villas in Mauritius right in the middle of world recognized golf courses in Mauritius. So this is facilitating actually the access to those network individuals, for high net worth individual, for them to invest in Mauritius, have a sound immovable property that they will be able to transmit afterwards. They could even actually use that for that succession planning, but they could even use it for renting in Mauritius, for instance, and deriving rental income, and that rental income won't be taxed at a higher amount than 15%. So with some specific investors also, in let me put it like this, incentives, we are even welcoming actually non-citizen to not even come, more than coming to Mauritius actually just to buy an immovable property, but for you to actually come, buy, stay, work not only for Mauritian companies, but even work for foreign based employers. And this is can give you rights to some premium visa, for example, benefit, where you won't pay tax on any income derived from non-Mauritian sources. So probably if I may conclude on that, yes, the jurisdiction, our global connectivity, the legal certainty, the access to world-class professional services, the tax, the legal and the investment advisors does make it an ideal hub for managing cross-border family wealth, legacy planning, and real estate investment.
Okay, can you please advise our audience on the various types of visas that foreign investors and or businesses or freelancers or individuals who want to maybe obtain some sort of citizenship or visits to Mauritius? Can you advise on what they can get?
Yes. So coming to that point, actually, oh, okay. Thought I was losing connection. So coming to that point, what we offer is not just a tropical climate for you to be in, not just an island surrounded by sea to be in, but we offer actually live and work permits for you to be here. For instance, you could, concrete example as you mentioned, you could invest in high-tech companies here, in machinery here, and gain residency by being a sound investor. You could gain residency by innovation, actually, so bringing innovative businesses to do here. You could gain residency by being a self-employed entrepreneur here in Mauritius. Probably there obviously would be some threshold of investment that you would have to abide by. That would be how you can come as an investor, how you could acquire, touch on that. So you could acquire property and be resident in Mauritius by virtue of you acquiring property in an integrated resort scheme, which is the IRS, in a real estate scheme, in a property development scheme, in smart city scheme, where there are incentives for corporate tax and even VAT. You could go to a ground to apartment, or even for seniors actually looking for retirement. So Mauritius could be your next home for you to require, and you could be having residency or live a retirement permit for you to come. And I'm thinking about non-citizen above 50 years old. That's not old, but that's as low as you can get actually if you want to come to Mauritius earlier. Now coming to the work visa, so you can also come as a professional, so you will be employed by a Mauritian entity or even by but all those multinational companies we were talking about, the regional headquarters we were talking about. You could come as a young professional occupation permit. And finally, if you want to live here in Mauritius, we have a premium visa. I've already touched on that. You have a permanent residency visa and one of the family occupation visa. So these are, to answer your question, the schemes that you would be having here in Mauritius, actually, for you to be able to work, live, retire in Mauritius.
Okay, thanks so much, Kathy. Again, I want to ask again this follow-up question. Again, my questions are very focused on looking at the functionality of the various industries. So we understand that business is all about taking risks, and again, some of the challenges we are facing within emerging markets and across the globe is that some of them have a very weak or non-functional insurance sector. How will you describe the insurance sector in Mauritius?
Yes, actually, together with our banking sector here, the insurance sector is one of the most solid and robust, actually, sector on the island. We could have insurance companies setting up here in Mauritius. We have actually more than insurance. Let me put it like this. You could have reinsurance businesses that you could do in Mauritius. So, for instance, you could centralize actually all those insurance risk that you're facing abroad, centralize them in Mauritius and have a hub here for you to streamline and look after those risk that you face when you are having insurance failures in other countries. I'm thinking about you could have a captive insurance business here in Mauritius. So again, managing, controlling all your risks, and those companies usually come with tax incentives. So for you to come using that platform in Mauritius with our partners in the banking, on the stock exchange, of a well-regulated platform. So having insurance companies, reinsurance companies, insurance brokers settled here in Mauritius, captive businesses, captive insurance being here, all of this come to solidify, manage your risks that you're facing elsewhere, and at the same time benefiting from a regulated, already established regulatory platform and tax incentives, actually.
Okay, thanks so much. Again, I think this is one very important question. We have already encouraged our audience to say, okay, you can open a company, we're giving them a series of reasons why Mauritius should be in their mind when it comes to extending their companies or when it comes to overcoming some of the challenges that they are facing given their current business structures. One of the issues that most companies are faced or that are faced with my clients is that we actually realize that in some of the markets it's actually very easy to incorporate the business, but when it comes to establishing a corporate bank account it becomes a big challenge. So now, how what is the east and how long does it take a company to create a corporate bank account after its incorporation process is completed?
That's a very good question, actually. So, the Mauritian actually banking system, and probably why is it very, very relevant to the African business, is that we offer a modern, well-regulated, internationally connected banking system. And that makes it an ideal partner for the African businesses that operate across borders or globally. As mentioned, we have multi-currency banking, forex flexibility, and to answer your question, you could hold actually all businesses in Mauritius are allowed to hold account in major currencies, be it USD, Euro, GBP, ZAR, and others. And how long does it take? Obviously, I wouldn't say that it take a day. I wouldn't say that it takes ages. It will just depend on how your business is structured, about all the information and KYC document that you will be providing. Remember, we are highly, highly regulated. So I'll be blunt, we don't just accept anyone to do business in Mauritius. So there is a robust CDD compliance, due diligence, customer due diligence that will have to go through actually for the bank to be able to, for you to open a bank account. It take the time that it has to take because it will be actually referencing and it will be verifying and it will be compliant to international norm for you to be able to open that bank account. So it can take, I would say, once you've established your business in Mauritius, you are already regulated by the FSC. And just for you to know, for establishing a business in Mauritius, you being a non-citizen, you will have to go through actually regulated management company, and that's where actually where I assist businesses and where we've partnered to assist those companies to be able to be managed by those regulated entities. So this is already a first screening that will be done by those management companies under the regulation of the FSC. And the next step to opening a bank account actually shouldn't take that long. But we do still have bureaucracy in here in Mauritius, but that's not bureaucracy because of bureaucracy. It's just really just for us to be able to diligently verify and authenticate before we are able to open a bank account. Probably, I just want to point out here: once your bank account is open, you have access to trade finance, to letter of credit. Actually, the Mauritian banks are active in trade financing, and you have access to a network of correspondent banks globally in Africa, in Asia, in Europe. The Bank of Mauritius, the central bank here, the Bank of Mauritius, is a highly credible, autonomous regulator aligned with international standard. So you could definitely centralize your cash flow in Mauritius here and have all those integrated system, couple probably fintech services with traditional services and the new opportunities. So we would offer that interconnected banking system to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, I think you have just highlighted one very huge challenge which I face across with so many clients that are, across the continent. And one of the biggest challenges that most companies, especially importers in Africa, are facing is that they face a lot of challenges in getting a letter of credit. So if you take an example, say a company that's engaged in importation, say in Swaziland, or say in Kenya or in Zimbabwe or in Uganda, they have to make some imports, say from Thailand or from Myanmar or in other part of the world, but the vendor actually requires them to have a letter of credit. And then most of them, they face a lot of difficulties in obtaining those letters of credit home, not because they don't have the financial capabilities of actually affording it, because of the fact that they just don't know the bank that they can get this facility from, and it becomes very, very challenging to them. So again, what advice will you give such a company that has been consistently, their main business is importation, and they have been facing a huge challenge when it comes to getting supplies from abroad because they are not able to submit these letters of credit. And since they are unable to submit this letter of credit, it means they cannot trade. You get it? So for sure, they'll be looking for a way out. So, what would you be telling any businessman or any company that is in this situation? Again, like I've said, it's a situation, it's a challenge that is faced by a majority of most of our businesses in Africa. So, what will you say about this?
Yes, and absolutely, absolutely, it's a real challenge. So in getting that letter of credit, actually, so establishing, let me put it like this: establishing a Mauritius-based entity will definitely improve the access to trade finance and obviously to letters of credit, which, as you mentioned, is such a critical instrument for trade, especially in Africa. And you've said it, where counterparties may be unknown or of a market less predictable. The financial institutions in Mauritius are well positioned to support actually international trade. And as mentioned, they offer very often, most of the time, a correspondent banking relationship with major international banks and those present in Africa and in the rest of the world. So the Mauritian banks actually are active in that trade finance, and what they do through that is they can issue advice or confirm letter of credits. So this is essential for de-risking cross-border trade. So businesses will find it easier to secure financing from Mauritian bank other than local African banks due to better risk management and assessment for our managing risk, but with the jurisdictional reputation. So concretely, by operating in Mauritius, businesses can benefit from a stable, internationally recognized jurisdiction, and this definitely boosts your credibility profile, your credit worthiness in the eyes of banks as well as trading partners. So, and this can be especially useful in the examples that you've just mentioned with African markets and the rest of the world. So, probably I'll end up with an example. If you have a trading or mining company operating in Zambia, in the jurisdiction you've mentioned, but selling equipment that is sourced from Asia or from Europe, uh, challenging or channeling actually to overcome the challenge, channeling those transactions through a Mauritian related company really improves the ease of getting the letter of credit confirmed, and something which would have been more difficult with through a Zambian bank alone, for example, obviously due to bank limitation, and even currency risk.
Okay, thank you so much, Kathy. We have just over 3 minutes to the end of the session, and I want to take this opportunity to appreciate you and to for the partnership and for trusting to collaborate with the Dicalo Consulting Group, like we discussed in our first meeting. In the global marketplace, the only way is nothing you're going to bring new in the market. And as a business, the only way we can succeed is that we need to collaborate, we need to network, and we need to see how we can share information in order to ensure that we're able to assist and solve the challenges of our customers. And again, we have just 2 minutes, so the message we're giving to our clients or to the audience or people who intend to set companies in Mauritius or in other parts of the world through also through our network. Given that the session was just an hour, and for sure it will not be possible. It's impossible for us to be able to provide all the necessary information that you need in order for you to take your investment decision. So if you have listened, you have gone through our conversation and you think it wise setting up in Mauritius, you should try as much as possible to contact us, to book a session with us, to go through, to explain, answer any pending questions which have not been resolved during our session with Katia. And then we're going to, you can just email us at consulting@dicalo.com, or you can book a meeting session with me on LinkedIn, or you can book a meeting session with us via our website at www.dicaloconsulting.com. at dicalo.com, or you can reach out to us through any of our platforms on Facebook. You get us through dicaloconsultinggroup.com, Dicalo Consulting Group. On TikTok, you get us through the same name, or you can also get us on Instagram and all the social media platforms. We are living in a digital world, and us as an evolving startup, it is very normal that we make our presence available everywhere. So, Katia, it is a pleasure. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and we hope and pray for a long-term, mutually beneficial business relationship between you, your company, and my team. So, have a nice day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.